A little girl says to the Hells Angels, "Hello, sir? My sister has a tattoo just like yours." What happened next? The golden rays of the setting sun stretched across the gravel parking lot of Mama's Kitchen, a cozy diner nestled beside Route 66. The aroma of sizzling bacon and freshly brewed coffee wafted through the screen door, blending with the crisp evening breeze. Inside, families filled the red vinyl booths, their laughter and conversation creating a warm, welcoming symphony. This was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where time seemed to slow down, and where nothing extraordinary ever disturbed the peace. Until the engines roared. The sound began as a faint growl in the distance, growing steadily louder until it became a thunderous presence that made the windows rattle and silverware clink against plates. Conversations died mid-sentence. Coffee cups paused halfway to lips. Every eye in the diner turned toward the entrance as 9 enormous motorcycles rolled into the parking lot, their polished chrome catching the last rays of sunlight like mirrors reflecting fire. The riders dismounted with fluid, practiced movements. Their black leather vests bore patches and symbols that required no introduction, no explanation. The infamous skull with wings, the red and white letters that spelled out a name known across continents. Hell's Angels. The air inside Mama's Kitchen transformed instantly. The comfortable warmth turned cold with tension. Parents unconsciously pulled their children closer. An elderly couple near the window suddenly found their plates fascinating. The waitress, a woman named Patricia who had worked there for 20 years, clutched her order pad so tightly her knuckles turned white. But amid this collective fear, one small voice remained fearless. At a corner booth sat little Emma Rodriguez, just 6 years old, with her foster mother, Mrs. Margaret Thompson. Emma had arrived in Margaret's care only 3 months earlier, a quiet child with sad eyes that had seen too much for someone so young. But today those eyes weren't sad. They were bright with curiosity as she watched the bikers enter. The Hells Angels moved through the diner with a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. They were imposing figures, tall and broad, with weathered faces that spoke of countless miles and untold stories. Their arms displayed intricate tattoos, their boots struck the floor with authority, and their very existence seemed to fill every corner of the small restaurant. The leader was a man who appeared to be in his early 60s. His hair, once black, was now streaked with silver, pulled back in a ponytail that reached past his shoulders. A thick beard covered his jaw, and his eyes, sharp and observant, scanned the room with the awareness of someone who had survived by staying alert. His vest bore a patch identifying him as president of the Mojave Brotherhood chapter. His road name, stitched in bold letters across the back, read, Ironclad. The bikers settled into 2 large tables that Patricia hastily pushed together near the back. They moved with deliberate calm, their leather creaking as they took their seats. Ironclad positioned himself facing the entrance, his back to the wall, a habit born from years of caution. Patricia approached with visible reluctance, her hands trembling as she distributed laminated menus. Her professional smile was strained, barely concealing the anxiety written across her face. "Welcome to Mama's Kitchen," she managed, her voice cracking slightly. "Can I get you all started with some drinks?" Ironclad looked up, and his weathered face softened with unexpected gentleness. "Coffee, black and strong. Been riding since dawn." His voice was deep but surprisingly warm. "And whatever your special is today, we're hungry enough to eat the table." The other bikers ordered with similar politeness, their voices respectful, their demeanor far less threatening than their appearance suggested. As Patricia hurried away, relief evident in her quick steps, the tension in the diner remained thick, but something had shifted. These men weren't causing trouble. They were simply travelers seeking a meal. That's when Emma made her decision. Before Margaret could register what was happening, the little girl slid out of the booth with determination etched on her young face. Margaret reached out instinctively, her mouth opening to call Emma back. But the child was already moving across the diner floor with the purposeful stride of someone on an important mission. "Emma!" Margaret whispered urgently, half rising from her seat, panic flooding her features. "Come back here right now." But Emma didn't hear, Or perhaps she simply chose not to listen. She walked directly toward the table where Ironclad sat, her small frame barely tall enough to see over the edge. The other bikers noticed her immediately. Conversations stopped. 8 pairs of eyes focused on this tiny girl approaching with absolutely no fear. Ironclad turned his head, his sharp gaze landing on Emma. The diner held its collective breath. This child, this brave or foolish little girl, stood before one of the most notorious motorcycle clubs in America, completely unintimidated. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the soft hiss of the grill in the kitchen and the distant hum of the refrigerator. Then Emma looked up at Ironclad with wide, innocent eyes and spoke in a clear voice that carried through the silent restaurant. "Hello, sir," she said politely, just as Margaret had taught her. "My sister has a tattoo just like yours." The words landed like thunder in the quiet space. Ironclad's expression froze, his eyes narrowing as he studied the child before him. The other bikers went completely still, their attention laser-focused on this unexpected exchange. One biker, a massive man with a shaved head and a network of scars across his arms, leaned forward slowly, his eyes locked on Emma with intense curiosity. Margaret covered her mouth with both hands, her face draining of color. Several diners gasped softly. Patricia, returning with a tray of coffee cups, stopped dead in her tracks. Ironclad slowly set down the menu he'd been holding. His gaze moved from Emma's innocent face to his own exposed forearm, where an elaborate tattoo stretched from wrist to elbow. It was a detailed design, a roaring lion with a crown of thorns, surrounded by chains and roses. Beneath the lion, in Gothic script, were the words "Blood and Honor." It wasn't the official Hell's Angels patch, which members guarded jealously, but it was distinctive. It was meaningful. It was something that marked a person as having walked a particular path, lived a particular life. "Just like mine," Ironclad repeated slowly, his voice carefully controlled. His eyes, which had seen violence and beauty and everything between, studied Emma with an intensity that would have made grown men uncomfortable. "Your sister has this exact tattoo?" Emma nodded enthusiastically, completely unaware of the gravity of her words. "Yes, sir. She has a lion with a crown on her arm, and chains and flowers. She showed it to me once when I asked about it. She said it was from before, from when she was different." The atmosphere in the diner shifted from tense to absolutely electric. You could have heard a pin drop in the charged silence. Ironclad's jaw tightened, his weathered face showing the first crack in his controlled exterior. The biker with the shaved head sat back heavily, exchanging a meaningful look with another member, a younger man with a long braided beard and eyes that suddenly gleamed with recognition. Margaret finally found her voice. "Emma!" she called out, her tone sharp with panic and embarrassment. "Come back here this instant." "I'm so sorry, sir. She's just a child. She doesn't understand." Ironclad raised one hand, a simple gesture that silenced Margaret immediately. His attention remained fixed on Emma, studying her with an intensity that suggested he was seeing something he hadn't expected, something that changed everything. "What's your sister's name, little one?" Ironclad asked, his voice softer now but filled with an undercurrent of something powerful. Anticipation, perhaps, or recognition. Emma smiled brightly, happy to answer this nice man's question. "Her name is Sarah. Sarah Rodriguez. Well, it used to be Sarah Martinez before she got married. But then she got divorced, so now she's Sarah Rodriguez again." If the diner had been quiet before, it became a tomb now. Ironclad's face, which had been merely serious, went completely still. Something flickered deep in his eyes. Recognition, memory, perhaps even pain. His hands, which had been resting on the table, slowly curled into fists, not with anger but with the effort of controlling some profound emotion. The biker with the shaved head, whose vest bore the name Crusher, muttered something under his breath that sounded like disbelief. The younger biker with the braided beard, called Nomad according to his patch, slowly shook his head, a strange smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Sarah Martinez," Ironclad repeated, and his voice had changed. There was something raw in it now, something vulnerable that hadn't been there before. He looked at Emma with new eyes, really seeing her, studying her features, the shape of her face, the color of her eyes, the way she stood with one hip slightly cocked in a gesture that was somehow familiar. "And where is your sister now?" Ironclad asked, his voice carefully measured, as if the answer to this question mattered more than anything else in the world. "She's at work," Emma said simply, as if this were the most natural conversation in the world. "She works at the Veterans Hospital downtown. She's a counselor there. She helps soldiers who came back from war and are sad or scared. Margaret takes care of me after school until Sarah gets home." She pointed back at Margaret, who looked like she might collapse at any moment. Ironclad was quiet for a long moment. The other bikers remained frozen, watching their president, waiting for his lead. The entire diner watched, mesmerized by this strange interaction unfolding before them. Finally, Ironclad gestured to the empty space beside him in the booth. "Why don't you sit down for a minute, Emma? I'd like to hear more about your sister's tattoo." Margaret started to object, rising from her seat with panic written across her face. But something in Ironclad's expression stopped her. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't dangerous. It was something else entirely. Something that looked almost like wonder mixed with old grief. Emma climbed up into the booth with the fearlessness of a child who had never learned to be afraid of the right things, who had seen real monsters in her young life and somehow knew these leather-clad men weren't among them. She sat next to Ironclad, her little legs swinging above the floor, completely at ease. "It's really beautiful," Emma continued, her voice bright with innocent admiration. "Sarah doesn't show it very often. She keeps it covered up for work because she says it's not professional. But I saw it once when she was getting dressed, and I asked her about it because it looked so pretty and also kind of scary." "And what did she tell you?" Ironclad asked, his voice gentler than it had been since entering the diner. "She said it was from when she was young and angry at the world, before she learned to help people instead of hurt them. She said she used to ride motorcycles with people who became her family. She called them her brothers and sisters of the road." Emma looked up at Ironclad with complete trust. "Are you one of those brothers?" The question hit like a physical blow. Ironclad's weathered face showed genuine emotion for the first time, the tough exterior cracking to reveal something raw underneath. He looked away briefly, his jaw working as he processed something deeply personal, something painful and precious all at once. When he looked back at Emma, his eyes were different, warmer, but also filled with an old sorrow that time had never quite healed. "Maybe I was," Ironclad said quietly, his voice rough with feeling. "A long time ago, in what feels like another lifetime." He paused, then asked carefully, "Tell me, Emma, does your sister ever talk about those days? Does she mention anyone named Marcus? Or maybe Ironclad?" Emma scrunched up her face, thinking hard. "I don't think so. She doesn't really talk about it much at all. When I ask about her tattoo or why she doesn't have motorcycle pictures like other people have family pictures, she gets quiet and sad. Margaret says Sarah had a different life before she settled down, before she became a counselor. Margaret says everyone has a past they're running from." Ironclad nodded slowly, as if Emma's words confirmed something he'd long suspected. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out his phone, his movements deliberate and careful. "Emma, I'm going to ask you something, and you can say no if you want. Would it be okay if I called your sister? I think she and I might have some catching up to do." Before Emma could answer, Margaret was at the table, her face tight with protective concern and barely controlled fear. "Absolutely not," she said firmly, though her voice shook. "I don't know what's going on here, but I won't have you people calling my foster daughter. Emma, come back to our table right now." Ironclad looked up at Margaret, and for the first time since entering Mama's kitchen, he smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and disarming, that transformed his entire face and revealed the man beneath the intimidating exterior. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, reading the recognition in her eyes that confirmed she'd given her name when making their reservation. "I understand your concern completely. I know what we look like. I know what people think when they see the patches on our vests. I know the stories, the legends, the fear. But I promise you, With everything I am. I mean no harm to this beautiful child or to your foster daughter." He paused, his expression becoming more serious. "If Sarah Martinez is who I think she is, if she's the woman I knew 15 years ago, then she and I rode together. We were family. We survived things together that would break most people. And if she's the same Sarah I'm thinking of, then she saved my life once, in more ways than one." Margaret's voice was sharp with disbelief and years of protective anger. "You people," she said, her restraint breaking. "You bikers with your violence and your drugs and your criminal activities. You're the reason Sarah nearly destroyed herself. She ran with people like you for 3 years, came home covered in tattoos, broken and angry and barely recognizable. It took her 5 years of therapy and hard work to put herself back together, to become the responsible woman she is today. I won't let you drag her back into that darkness." Ironclad's expression didn't change, but something profound and sad entered his eyes. He nodded slowly, accepting her anger as if he'd expected it, perhaps even deserved it. "You're right," he said simply. "You're absolutely right to be angry. The life we lead isn't for everyone. It's hard and dangerous and sometimes unforgiving. Sarah left because she wanted something different, something better, and we respected that choice. We didn't chase her. We didn't try to bring her back. We let her go because that's what she needed." He paused, his voice becoming quieter but somehow more powerful. "But Mrs. Thompson, if Sarah never told you, let me tell you now. Your foster daughter is one of the most remarkable people I've ever known. During her time with us, she saved 4 lives. She pulled a brother from a burning wreck when everyone else was too scared to get close. She talked a desperate member out of eating a bullet when he'd lost everything. She donated bone marrow to a brother's daughter who would have died without it. And she took a knife meant for me during a bar fight, still has the scar to prove it." The diner remained absolutely silent, every patron now openly invested in this unfolding drama. Margaret's expression wavered, shock and confusion replacing her defensive anger. Ironclad continued, his voice filled with respect and old affection. "Sarah Martinez wasn't just a member. She was our moral compass. She kept us human when the world tried to make us monsters. She reminded us that we were more than our worst moments. When she left, it hurt. It hurt all of us. But we understood. Some people are meant for the road and some people are meant for something more. Sarah was always meant for more." He pulled out a worn business card and placed it on the table. "This is my number. I would very much like to speak with Sarah if she's willing, but I'll leave that choice entirely to her. I won't push. I won't intrude. But if she wants to talk, if she wants to remember, I'm here." Ironclad looked down at Emma, who had been watching this exchange with wide, fascinated eyes. "Emma, it was an honor meeting you. You're one of the bravest little girls I've ever met. Your sister would be proud." Emma grinned, showing a gap where she'd recently lost a tooth. "Will you tell me stories about when Sarah rode motorcycles? About when she was brave and wild?" "If she says it's okay," Ironclad promised, his smile genuine and warm. "I'll tell you every story I remember, and there are a lot of them." He looked back at Margaret. "We'll finish our meal and be on our way. We don't want to cause any trouble or make anyone uncomfortable. We just wanted some food and coffee before getting back on the road." Margaret picked up the business card with trembling fingers, staring at it as if it were a grenade that might explode at any moment. The card was simple: a phone number, an email address, and the words, "Ironclad Desert Brotherhood MC." She took Emma's hand, her grip gentle but firm, and led her back to their booth. Emma waved at Ironclad as they walked away, and he waved back, his expression a mixture of hope and resignation. The bikers finished their meal in relative quiet, though the atmosphere in the diner had transformed completely. The fear had evaporated, replaced by curiosity and a strange respect. People whispered among themselves, reconstructing what they'd witnessed, building narratives to explain this unexpected encounter. When the check came, Ironclad left $200 on the table, far more than their modest meal cost. As they stood to leave, their leather creaking and boots heavy on the floor, Ironclad paused at Margaret's booth one final time. Tell Sarah, he said quietly, his eyes holding Margaret's. Tell her that Ironclad says the lion still remembers. She'll know what it means. Then he and his brothers walked out into the fading twilight, their motorcycles roaring to life like mechanical dragons. They pulled out of the parking lot in formation, their engines gradually fading into the distance, leaving behind only tire marks and a restaurant full of people trying to process what they'd witnessed. That evening, when Sarah Rodriguez came home from her shift at the Veterans Hospital, emotionally drained from helping soldiers wrestle with their demons, she found Margaret waiting at the door with an expression she'd never seen before. A complicated mixture of shock, confusion, protectiveness, and something that might have been understanding. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked immediately, her counselor instincts kicking in. "Is Emma okay? Did something happen?" Margaret handed her the business card without a word. Sarah took it, glanced down, and the world tilted. Her face went completely white. Her hand flew unconsciously to her upper arm, where beneath her professional blouse, hidden carefully from her colleagues and clients, the lion with the crown of thorns remained inked into her skin. "No," she whispered, the word barely audible. "No, this isn't possible." "A man named Ironclad came to the diner today," Margaret said, her voice carefully controlled. "Emma walked right up to him and told him you have the same tattoo. He wants you to call him. He said to tell you the lion still remembers." Sarah sank into the nearest chair, the business card trembling in her hand. Tears filled her eyes, spilling down her cheeks before she could stop them. 15 years. 15 years since she'd walked away from that life, from those people, from that version of herself. "Oh God," she breathed. "Marcus. He found me." Margaret sat down across from her. "Sarah, he told me things. Things you never told me about what you did during those years. About lives you saved. About why you got that tattoo." Sarah looked up, her eyes red and swimming with tears. "I couldn't tell you, Margaret. I knew you'd never understand. You always thought they were just criminals, just violent bikers who corrupted me. But they weren't. They saved me." Her voice broke. "When Mom died and Dad disappeared, when I was 17 and alone and so angry I wanted to burn the world down, they found me. They gave me a family when I felt like I had nothing. They taught me that strength doesn't mean hurting people, it means protecting them." "Then why did you leave?" Margaret asked gently. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Because Marcus made me. He saw that I wanted something different, that I was meant for something beyond the road. He said I had too much light in me to spend my life in the shadows. So he made me promise to leave, to go to college, to use my anger to help people instead of fighting the world." She laughed bitterly. "Walking away from them was the hardest thing I ever did. They were my brothers and sisters. They were my family. But Marcus told me that real family wants what's best for you, even if it means losing you. So I left. I built this life. I became this person." Sarah looked down at the business card, running her thumb over the embossed letters. "But that tattoo, that lion, it's a reminder of who I was, of who, in some ways, I still am." Emma came running into the room, her face lit with excitement. "Sarah, did Margaret tell you? I met your biker friends. Well, one of them, Ironclad. He was so cool and nice. He said you were brave and strong and that you saved people. He said you were family." Sarah pulled Emma into her arms, holding her tight as tears continued to stream down her face. "Yeah, baby," she whispered into Emma's hair. "They were family. They still are." That night, after Emma was tucked safely in bed, Sarah sat in her kitchen with her phone in her hand, staring at Ironclad's number. 15 years had passed since she'd left the Desert Brotherhood. 15 years since she'd traded her leather vest for professional attire, her motorcycle for a sensible car, the open road for a stable career helping traumatized veterans rebuild their lives. She'd built a good life, a respectable life. She'd become the woman society expected her to be, the woman Margaret had prayed she'd become. But that tattoo on her arm, the lion with the crown of thorns, it was a reminder of who she'd been, of a part of herself she'd never quite been able to leave behind. Her finger hovered over the call button. What would she say? How do you bridge 15 years with a phone call? How do you explain to someone who knew the wild, angry girl you were that you'd become someone different, someone calmer, someone who wore blazers and attended parent-teacher conferences? But maybe she hadn't changed as much as she thought. Maybe the girl who'd pulled a burning man from a wreck and the woman who now helped soldiers face their trauma were the same person, just on different roads. She pressed call. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered, rougher than she remembered but unmistakable. "This is Ironclad." Sarah's voice came out as barely a whisper, thick with emotion and 15 years of absence. "The lion still roars, Marcus. Even after all these years." There was a long pause, filled with the weight of history and lost time. When Ironclad spoke again, his voice was rough with feeling, broken with emotion he'd clearly been holding back. "Phoenix," he said, using her old road name, the name she'd earned after rising from her own ashes. "God, I can't believe it's really you. I can't believe after all this time. A little girl with your smile walked right up to me and said you had the same tattoo." They talked for hours that night. They shared memories of the past. Roads they'd traveled together, brothers and sisters they'd loved and lost, moments of violence and moments of grace. They talked about the lives they'd built in the years since Sarah had left. Her work as a counselor, helping veterans navigate trauma. His continued work with the club, now focused on charity rides and mentoring troubled kids, trying to give back what the road had given him. They talked about regrets and choices, about the people they'd become and the people they'd been. They talked about Emma, about foster care and second chances, about how Sarah was giving a child the family she'd once needed so desperately herself. "You did good, Phoenix," Ironclad said as their conversation stretched past midnight. "You became everything I knew you could be, everything you deserved to be." "I missed you," Sarah admitted, her voice breaking. "All of you. I missed the family. We missed you too. We still do. But we understood. We always understood." A week later, Ironclad and two other brothers came to dinner. Margaret, nervous but softened by Ironclad's respectful phone call and clear concern for Sarah's well-being, watched as these leather-clad men treated her home with reverence, played gently with Emma, and made Sarah laugh until tears streamed down her face. Emma sat wide-eyed as she heard stories of a Sarah she'd never known. A woman who was fearless and wild and brave, who'd lived by her own rules and protected those weaker than herself. A woman who wasn't just a responsible counselor and foster mother, but a legend in her own right. Ironclad pulled out an old photograph, creased and faded with time. It showed a younger Sarah, maybe 22, sitting on a massive motorcycle with a grin that spoke of freedom and rebellion and absolute confidence. Her arms were bare, showing the fresh lion tattoo, and she was surrounded by other bikers, all of them looking at her with obvious affection and respect. "You were one of us," Ironclad said, handing her the photo. "You'll always be one of us. The road doesn't forget its own." Sarah held the photograph with trembling hands, staring at that younger version of herself. "I thought I had to bury her," she whispered. "I thought I had to kill Phoenix to become Sarah, to be respectable, to be the kind of person who could adopt Emma and give her a stable life." "You didn't have to kill anyone," Ironclad said gently. "You just grew. Phoenix didn't die. She just learned to fly in a different direction." Before leaving, Ironclad crouched down to Emma's level. "Your sister is one of the bravest people I've ever known," he told her seriously. "She lived with honor when honor meant sacrifice. And when she knew she needed to change her path, she had the courage to do it. That's real strength, little one. Remember that." As the bikers rode off into the night, their engines roaring like thunder, Sarah stood on her porch with Emma and Margaret, feeling something she hadn't felt in 15 years. Whole. She'd spent so long trying to be either Sarah or Phoenix, the responsible counselor or the wild biker, never realizing she could be both. Margaret, who had spent years trying to understand the daughter she'd fostered, finally saw the complete picture. "I'm sorry," she said softly, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry I never understood that they were your family, that they made you who you are." Sarah squeezed her hand. "And so are you. You gave me a home when I needed stability. You helped me become the person who could help Emma. I'm lucky to have had both families." Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. Will Ironclad come visit again? Sarah smiled. The first truly unreserved smile Margaret had seen from her in years. Yeah, baby, I think he will. Family always finds its way back. That night, after everyone was asleep, Sarah carefully unpinned the photograph Ironclad had given her and placed it on her dresser next to a picture of her and Emma at the zoo. 2 different lives. 2 different families. Both real. Both part of who she was. She rolled up her sleeve and looked at the lion tattoo in the mirror. Really looked at it for the first time in years instead of just covering it up and pretending it wasn't there. The lion with the crown of thorns, surrounded by chains and roses. Blood and honor. She'd gotten it after saving Ironclad's life, after stepping between him and a knife in a bar fight that had gotten out of control. He'd gotten the same tattoo on his arm, a bond between them, a reminder that they'd bled together and survived together. The lion still roars, she whispered to her reflection, touching the faded ink. Even after all these years, and for the first time since walking away from the Desert Brotherhood, since trading her motorcycle for a minivan and her leather vest for professional blazers, Sarah felt at peace with all the different parts of herself. She wasn't just Sarah the counselor or Phoenix the biker. She was both, and that was okay. More than okay. It was exactly who she needed to be. In the end, Emma's innocent observation had done more than reconnect 2 old friends. It had reminded Sarah that her past wasn't something to be ashamed of or hidden away. It was part of her strength. Part of what made her capable of helping traumatized veterans understand that their past doesn't define them but can empower them. Sometimes healing comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it takes a child's fearless honesty to remind us that we're more than just one thing, one identity, one version of ourselves. Sometimes a tattoo isn't just ink on skin. It's a reminder of who we were, who we are, and who we might yet become. And sometimes, just sometimes, family finds us again when we need it most, even if we didn't know we needed it at all. The lion still roars, the phoenix still rises, and the road, that endless ribbon of asphalt and possibility, always remembers its own.